Hi, it's Darren, and welcome to the day after Trump's Liberation Day. It was quite the day in the markets. Things are off anywhere from 4 to 5.5% today. So I think the market's kind of weighed in on what it thinks of the tariffs that Trump's doing. Canada escaped relatively unscathed compared to what we thought and the politicians and the press thought was coming. I wanted to take a few minutes and talk to you about this, though. I've kind of stayed away from commenting with anybody really on kind of what's been happening. A big part of that is because I've read The Art of the Deal, and I was aware that a lot of the way Trump negotiates is by kind of coming in, breaking all the furniture and storming around. And a lot of it's just noise and really designed to put people off balance. And it certainly worked, I think. But I didn't really was something that we really needed to respond to both publicly and with you and especially in our portfolio expressions. But I did want to take some time today because this is a lot and now that we've actually got the game plan, although I will confess the chart that he showed of how the tariffs and the responses calculated. I think, Reddit and other sources were on that within minutes that there's something funky with your math. It seemed like it was not the tariffs. It seemed to be something like the trade deficit over the imports divided by two or anyway. But the point is that we're clearly in a trade war, as we've all been talking about, and really what should we be doing about it? So I wanted to share a couple of my thoughts with you about what we're doing about it and what I think everyone should be doing about it. And I'll start from where I've started before, whenever we've had something that's happened in the markets or in the economy. And it's to remind you that we don't do panic here. Like we don't respond and move after every little thing that's happening. We try to take our time and make reasonably good assessments about where we should be, maybe where we shouldn't be. I also want to make sure you know, and I've mentioned this in previous communications, I'm a big believer in something called Stein's Law. And this is particularly interesting right now. So Stein's Law is from an American economist from the 30s and 40s named Herbert Stein. And he coined this idea, and the quote from him is, "If something cannot go on forever, it will stop." So that's Stein's Law. You can Google it. And that's helped me immensely over the decades as an advisor. And it sounds kind of simple, but it's actually a very profound idea. And what I would ask is for you to look at what's happening right now in terms of this tariff Trump tirade thing that's happening is how long can this really go on for? Like, obviously it's here. People have to deal with it. But can this go on forever? I would say no. And I do a podcast called Simply Sarbit with my old friend Larry Sarbit, who's a very well-known value investor. And you can find it on Apple Podcasts. I did a conversation with him the other day. That episode will be coming out shortly. And we went over kind of a history of the different tariff wars that have happened throughout the world and throughout history, going back a few hundred years, and kind of examined them a little bit. And all of them are political in how they start. Sometimes it feels like in the moment it might be the right thing to do to protect an industry or protect a plan, but they always wind up badly because they might be interesting political ideas, but they're almost inevitably and always and everywhere bad economic policies. So, although it is true that the one thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history, but we're hopeful that, this will not last a long, long time. And I think given the market's reaction to it and a few other things, I can't imagine this goes on for a long time, but I don't know. And no one else does either. Let's be reminded of that. One quick thing back to Stein's Law. This is actually quite an interesting coincidence. Herbert Stein has a son named Ben Stein. Now, Ben Stein's an actor. And you will know Ben Stein from the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he was Ferris Bueller's teacher. And at the opening scene of that movie, he's presenting to the class a history lesson on the Hawley Smoot tariffs of the Great Depression. This was the scene where you'll remember this line. I got to read it to make sure I get it right. This is where we find out that the guy who knows this kid who's going out with this girl who saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night. So that was the scene. So if you want to get a really good update, and I would argue that maybe a few people in the cabinet in the United States should maybe go and rewatch Ferris Bueller's Day Off for a really quick synopsis of how did the Smoot-Hawley tariffs work back in the 30s. But moving on, just a strange coincidence that Herbert Stein, Ben Stein, Ferris Bueller, Hoot Smalley, all connected. The world's an interesting place. The universe is an interesting place. So I think, to cut to the chase, what are we doing about this? So Christian and I have been working on this. The whole team's been working on this. And the first thing is, I want you to be reminded that we're not panicking. We don't do that here. And actually, the market, I think, is giving us some really interesting opportunities, which I'll talk about in a sec. But we are sticking to our plan. We've always believed in buying really well, like high quality businesses, staying well diversified, letting the management teams of those individual businesses try to navigate what this means to them, and make the right and best choices and decisions. So we kind of leave it to them to do. Our function is to stay invested and let them do their thing. Remain, as I say, diversified. We've actually been increasing some of our diversification to Europe, because the one thing I think Trump has done is remind everybody that you might want to sharpen up what you're doing. So we're actually seeing some positive things for the first time in a long time coming out of Europe because of this rhetoric on tariffs. So actually hopeful that things are getting better there. So we've already started positioning some of our assets. It's also a valuation change. The United States has been the best house on the street for a long time, and as a result, its valuations are much higher. So we're taking a little bit of advantage of what we see as a big value discrepancy as the winds of change are happening there. So we've made some of those adjustments, and Christian's worked really hard to kind of give us, I think, the right guidance on how to do that. So we're really positive with those things. We're also staying invested in what I believe are trends and themes that are highly persistent, that are things that are not going away, whether President Trump does something or it costs an extra 10 or 20%. These are trends that are going to be around for a long time, and they're just, in some cases, at the beginning stages. So I'll give you an example. If you've had a chance to play around with Chat GPT or Perplexity or any of these AI systems, they are remarkable, and I've just begun playing with some of them, but there's no doubt that these are going to very much change the world in terms of the productivity lift that they provide. We have to be paying attention to price of the securities we buy, obviously, and there's a lot of ways this ball can bounce, but there's no doubt that this is something that's going to be inevitable in how it changes things, in the same way that the internet, television, other things change the world. So we're just at the beginning of this. That's a persistent theme that we're trying to figure out how do we implement it. We've got things like Wegovy, Ozempic, and other these drugs that are providing tremendous weight loss advantages for people. And also by doing so, these were really designed for people to help navigate the impacts of diabetes. But they're having incredibly positive benefits, because we know that obesity creates a lot of other health conditions. So if you can alleviate obesity, you begin addressing a whole lot of other things too. Nothing's a free lunch. There's always a trade-off, but this is a remarkable development. And as we're also seeing DNA-based medicine, this whole area of healthcare is changing dramatically with technology, and every new advantage makes it go faster. So this is also something that we believe is persistent. We're taking advantage of that. We've been invested in water for a long time. That's another theme that we still think has lots of room to keep going. Energy, not just important for Canada, but globally, all these technologies are remarkable increased usage of energy. So there's an area that has persistence. There's others around telecommunications and other things, but we're trying to remain allocated to those themes. And yes, we're always going to get market turbulence, and sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. We went into this year, and Christian, I'm getting ahead of the conversation Christian and I are going to be doing in a week or two as our spring update for you. But we have always had market volatility, and we'll continue to have it. Our job is to just do our best to ignore it and not change just for the sake of change. So I think we've been really trying to zero in on, again, what are those trends that are persistent? What are the best quality companies we can find to implement it? And if we can get some turbulence to let us buy cheaper, we want to take advantage of that. And I think we're getting that right now from this external event. I want to leave you with it. Oh, by the way, I do have another thought on this, by the way, about what are the other things that might happen. The United States has an enormous amount of debt that's rolling over this year. And I think one of the outcomes of what is happening with markets, and potentially, the press is always going to say there's a recession around every corner, like a boogeyman under every bed. And if we get one or not, we'll know after it's over. But I do believe that there is a positive outcome of this if interest rates drop as a result of this tariff tirade. So if markets continue to stay very turbulent and lower, if we see any other economic impacts come, you're going to see interest rates fall, which will very much help the rollover of these mountains of debt that the United States has. So that, I'm not saying that's part of President Trump's strategy, but it might be something that ultimately could actually be a good thing. So we're trying to see through the next little while to what are some of the other things that are coming. So I'll put that on your plate as something to look at that we're looking at. But I want to leave you with this thought, and I found it very helpful to be reminded of this the other day. And if we are in a trade war, I think it actually helps us to listen to the words of a warrior, one of the greatest martial artists of all time, Bruce Lee. And you may have heard this quote before where he talks about be like water. And he says, be like water, making its way through cracks. Do not be assertive, but adjust to the object, and you shall find a way around or through it. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. If you put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put water in the bottle, it becomes the bottle. If you put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. So with that, I want you to stay reminded on that we're doing the best that we can through this. We actually have our new office. I'm reporting to you from our new office in Oakville. You can see I still got things on the floor. We still have furniture left to arrive. I won't show a video of what's happening here until we're more fully moved in, but it's only been a couple of weeks. We also have a new staff member that's going to be joining us at the beginning of May, so I'll report on that when she joins the team. And we've got a posting for another person. So we've got a lot of things happening here. I'll give you a more fulsome update later. But for today, I just wanted to let you know what we're thinking about this Trump thing. I have been kind of silent for a while, but I think now it's time to kind of give you some perspective now that we actually have some information that we can maybe rely on for a couple days, couple of weeks. We'll see. So with that, be like water. I wish you all the best. Let me know if you need anything. Thanks.